won the war from the T-34 tanks to modern vehicles. You notice the technological evolution of the Russian army, which inspires us to develop in the same direction. Burkina Faso made a deal in Moscow that no one knows about, but the entire Sahel is already shifting. What did Traoré and Putin agree on behind closed doors? Why are we satellites and mercenaries suddenly flooding West Africa? Let's find out. Music. In the weeks following the Moscow meeting, Burkina Faso's military camps no longer look like what they did a month ago. Uniforms are changing, the drills sound different, foreign accents echo in training grounds. What's happening is not just reform, it's reconstruction. Since Traoré's return from Russian military, convoys have quietly begun arriving under tight security, not loaded with grain or medicine, but with crates of equipment bearing Cyrillic labels. Russian-made body armor, infrared optics, encrypted communication systems, and closed combat weapons have started replacing outdated, often second-hand Western supplies. Traoré isn't refurbishing a system, he's building a new army from the ground up. In Russia's image, the numbers speak for themselves. While NATO-affiliated missions once capped training slots to avoid overdependence, Russia has opened the floodgates. Entire Burkina battalions are now scheduled for combat training. Rotations in Russia learning hybrid warfare, cyber resilience, and urban counterinsurgency tactics modeled not on peacekeeping but on Russia's playbook. From Syria, Chechnya, and the Donbass, these soldiers aren't being taught restraint, they're being taught dominance. Inside Burkina Faso, new military minds are opening in the instructors, Russians, some officials, others operating in the ambiguous zone between contractor and state. Their mission is clear: to standardize Russian doctrine across the Burkina Faso armed forces. That includes command structure revisions with a shift from decentralized Western-style units to hierarchical Russia model brigades that prioritize shock speed and loyalty. This isn't about fighting insurgents anymore, it's about preparing a military force capable of repelling foreign threats, resisting internal coups, and enforcing a political vision. The doctrine being passed down isn't counterinsurgency, it's counterinsurgency blended with political defense. In other words, a state army that protects the state project. There's also a less visible but no less significant transformation. The intelligence services are being retold. Russia's presence has extended into Burkina Faso's military intelligence architecture with the establishment of data sharing links, satellite imagery access, and new surveillance operations across the country's borders. Information flows that once relied on French or U.S. liaison offices are now being rerouted through Russian servers and protocols. At the operational level, Burkina Faso commanders have reported that Russian advisors are now embedded within key command posts, including strategic border zones in the east and northeast. Advisors don't just consult, they influence tactics, mission objectives, and threat prioritization. For the first time in years, Burkina Faso is leading offensives on its terms, with intelligence and strategy tailored to its unique terrain, not filtered through the lens of foreign donor concerns. The shift has already shown results in several border skirmishes in the past month. Burkina Faso forces have deployed drone-guided raids and jammer-equipped ambushes that crippled enemy communications, tactics uncharacteristic of the old army but straight from Russian asymmetric warfare doctrine. And it isn't just tactics, it's symbolism. On state television, national parades now feature tiger-armored vehicles and Russian marching songs, while speeches reference our allies in the East. In short, the army has become a political institution, broadcasting a message louder than any press conference. We've changed sides, but why does Traoré want this kind of army? Not just stronger, but loyal, centralized, ideologically aligned, because he isn't only preparing to fight insurgents, he's preparing for what comes after this transformation: a political storm, a regional challenge, a final confrontation with the forces that once ruled his land, and while the soldiers train a different kind of war, is already being fought one you can't see on the battlefield. So what's next? Here's a reminder to please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on Black culture, history, civilization, and identity. Let's continue now as Burkina Faso's military reshapes itself in the open. Something more elusive is taking place behind the scenes. You won't see it on state TV. There's no official announcement, but everyone in Ouagadougou who matters knows that Wagner is back. Officially, Russia denies deploying private mercenaries in West Africa, but the footprints are too familiar. The security convoys that don't file flight plans, the armored vehicles without national markings, the pale-skinned trainers who speak no French but move with authority inside restricted zones. They don't wear uniforms, but they carry command, and that's what makes this force so dangerous. It's not in the open, and it doesn't have to follow rules. After the 2024 death of Yevgeny Prigozhin, the Western media spun a simple tale. Vanna was over. But the truth is Vanna didn't die. It evolved. What emerged from its ashes was a quieter, more streamlined network of Russian paramilitary operatives now embedded under the banner of military technical cooperation in Burkina Faso. They aren't hunting photo ops there, designing security from the inside out. And unlike in Mali or the Central African Republic, Vanner's mission here is not just to fight, it's to reshape the state's nervous system, security, intelligence, border control, resource protection, even political enforcement. Traoré's government has entrusted them not with one task, but many, and because Vanner's new operators act more like special consultants than soldiers, their influence is harder to track, but much harder to uproot. One of their key roles, securing gold and phosphate sites in a nation where the economy is still vulnerable to smuggling networks and foreign exploitation. Vanner link units now guard extraction zones and transport routes, but this isn't charity. It's calculated. In exchange, Russia gets favorable access to mining concessions, bypassing the IMF-mandated transparency rules that once kept such deals above board. The second major role is political, shielding. Human rights observers and NGO staff have quietly reported that dissident groups and activist leaders have vanished in recent weeks, many in regions where Vanner is said to be active. No official charges, no media coverage, just silence. The message is subtle but chilling. This is a new order, and it does not tolerate disruption. But perhaps Wagner's most critical role is psychological. Their presence alone reshapes the risk calculus of any foreign state considering intervention. The U.S. and France may still have embassies and aid programs, but they no longer hold military leverage. Why? Behind Burkina Faso's formal army stands an unofficial shield of force that's already demonstrated from Syria to Libya that it can play dirty and win, and the West knows it. In recent internal briefings, leaked diplomatic cables suggest France has paused surveillance operations near northern Burkina Faso out of fear of unpredictable responses. That's the diplomatic code for don't mess with Wagner. This silence isn't a mistake. It's a retreat, a signal that for now the West no longer owns the rules of engagement here. But Wagner's influence doesn't stop with security. It extends into communications, political risk assessments, and according to regional sources, the early phases of cyber strategy development in a world where control doesn't just come from guns, but from data. Wagner is laying the groundwork that can make Burkina Faso digitally autonomous and digitally aligned with Moscow. So if Traoré's restructured army is the muscle, Wagner is the invisible hand guiding, shielding, disciplining. But why stop there? What if Russia could give not just men but eyes in the sky, total oversight of borders, movement, and threats before they even appear, as Russian instructors shape soldiers on the ground, and Vanner influences events in the shadows? Another Transformation has taken hold, but this one is unfolding in the silence of the upper atmosphere. Burkina Faso is no longer just building an army, it's building a sky fortress in one of the most unexpected turns since the Traore Putin meeting. Burkina Faso has entered a new era of surveillance and space-linked security thanks to a satellite agreement quietly signed with Moscow and coordinated through the alliance of Sahel states. It's a deal that puts Burkina Faso for the first time in its history into the orbit of global intelligence collection. Before now, if Burkina Faso wanted satellite imagery of its porous borders, it had two options: beg France or request low-resolution snapshots from third-party services, often with critical delays. That era is over with. Russia's help. Burkina Faso now has near real-time access to high-resolution satellite feeds over its territory in the wider Sahel region, and it's not just about watching, it's about controlling the new satellite systems, part of a broader Russian initiative to increase its orbital footprint over Africa, are equipped with thermal tracking, signal interception, and encrypted communications relays. This allows the Burkina state to do what it couldn't before: track insurgent movement at night, intercept communications across borders, and coordinate multi-location responses within seconds. Imagine what that does to rebel supply lines. Imagine how it changes counterinsurgency in terrain that was once a blind spot. But there's more. The system includes geofencing tools, digital perimeters that alert security forces the moment unauthorized movement is detected in sensitive areas like gold mines, military bases, or the Traore region. This isn't just surveillance, it's territorial awareness on a digital scale, and every alert, every movement log, every intercepted call now flows through a command structure built with Russian telemetry systems bypassing older French platforms on the civil front. The same infrastructure is being extended to emergency communications, national broadcasting, and potentially internet sovereignty. Projects Russian engineers are reportedly working with Burkina Faso teams on satellite internet backbones independent of Western tech giants aimed at securing data flows and reducing foreign cyber exposure. Why is this important? Because modern warfare isn't just about firepower, it's about who sees first, who reacts fastest, and who owns the information loop in this domain. Burkina Faso has taken a giant leap forward, not as a customer of foreign surveillance, but as a participant in it. This shift has also terrified some in the region. Neighboring governments, particularly those still aligned with Western partners, have begun to question what Burkina Faso sees from above. Is it watching troop movements across borders? Is it collecting signals from embassies? No one knows for sure, and that's exactly the point. Opacity breeds caution in the new Sahel. Burkina Faso is no longer the watch, it's the watcher. The implications go beyond military advantage. Traore is now in possession of a tool that gives him predictive power, the ability to anticipate unrest, monitor dissent, and safeguard assets in a way few African leaders ever have, and all of it is backed by a country, Russia, with no interest in regime change, no colonial guilt to exploit, and no humanitarian clauses hidden in the fine print. This control the sky feeds directly into Traore's larger vision, a state that is not just sovereign in name, but in every pixel, signal, and frequency it operates on. But sovereignty must touch the ground to security, and surveillance are tools, but tools need an engine, and that engine is economic. Independence, military power can protect a state's satellites, can make it intelligent, but no revolution survives without one thing: the ability to feed and fund itself. Trade knows this, and so does Putin. That's why his rifles arrive and orbital systems go online. Something more quietly transformational is happening in Burkina Faso's fields, factories, and mines. This is not the revolution of slogans and salutes. This is the economic engine humming beneath. It started with agriculture for decades. Burkina Faso's rural economy was structurally trapped, producing cash crops like cotton for export while importing basic foodstuffs like rice. And we, a nation with fertile land, was starving on foreign terms. But post Moscow, that equation is being reversed. Russia has begun shipping high-yield seed varieties, fertilizer components, and irrigation equipment, not as a gift, but as part of a joint development program meant to kickstart localized food production. And this isn't development in the old NGO sense where Western contractors write reports while local farms struggle. No, this is strategic agroengineering with Russian agronomists working hand-in-hand with Burkina Faso technicians to create sustainable self-contained food systems. Pilot projects are already underway near the Muhyun and Kamoa River basins where Burkina Faso aims to become a net exporter of rice and tomatoes by 2026. Then comes the processing as part of the broader plan. Russia has offered technical support to help Burkina Faso build out its agro-industrial sector. This means not just growing food, but packaging, canning, and exporting it across the Sahel. Already state-up supported cooperatives have begun forming around this model, giving young Burkina Faso workers something the old economy never did. A reason to stay, build, and profit. But Traore's ambitions don't stop at agriculture. Gold, Burkina Faso's most coveted resource, has long been extracted, exported, and exploited by foreign companies, most of whom paid pennies in taxes and left behind poisoned land and broken promises. Now Russia has proposed a different model: refine it here, tax it here, store it here, a new refinery project backed by Russian engineers. And Burkina Faso state capital is already under discussion to keep the wealth underground from being smuggled overseas before it benefits the country. What this means is profound. For the first time, Burkina Faso would not be exporting raw gold, but refined bullion stamped and registered by its financial authority. In doing so, truly would cut the chain of dependency that has kept Burkina Faso poor beneath its riches. Trade is shifting too since the May 2025 meeting. New transport deals and bilateral trade corridors are being negotiated under the radar. Russian firms are investing in logistics, rail infrastructure, and telecommunications, offering an alternative to French-owned supply routes and internet cables that have long been used as soft power levers. Even education is being reshaped to feed this economic engine. Scholarships and vocational training programs are being offered in Russian technical institutes for Burkina Faso engineers, coders, and agri-specialists, not just to learn, but to return and build. This isn't brain drain, it's brain reloading. And unlike Western aid models, which tend to flood developing nations with quick loans and impossible conditions, Russia's deals come with something different: mutual benefit contracts. You produce, we buy you. Hosts, we build you, and we stay. What emerges is a vision of economic sovereignty that doesn't rely on exporting people, depending on donors, or begging for forgiveness. Every budget cycle is a model where Burkina Faso feeds itself, fuels itself, and funds its future. But can any of this last without political protection? Who's watching Traore's back while he breaks old rules and rewrites new ones? By now it's clear something big is unfolding in Burkina Faso, something deeper than arms, satellites, or seeds. The pieces on the board have moved, the tempo has changed, and one player is no longer in control. France and its Western allies are watching a checkmate form in slow motion, and there's no knight left to save the king. For decades, Burkina Faso sat inside France's post-colonial sphere like a well-worn cog, economically dependent, militarily tethered, diplomatically polite. Its leaders, even when elected, operated under the shadow of Paris, but with one parade, one alliance, and one president willing to rip up the script. That motto has shattered the silence from Western capitals, is the loudest Proof of all gone are the bold. Condemnations, the sanctions, threats, the usual calls for democratic norms instead. What we've seen since the Traoré Putin meeting is a strange, hesitant diplomacy, a shrug, a stutter, a fear of escalation. Because deep down they know they've lost. The room not just in Burkina Faso, but across. The region, the balance has tilted Mali, Niger, and now Chad have aligned more closely with Traoré's stance rejecting foreign bases, challenging IMF, conditionality, and turning toward eastward partnerships. What once looked like isolated coups are now coordinated realignments, and at the center of it all stand a man in fatigues, shaking hands in Moscow and giving fiery speeches in Ouagadougou about dignity and resistance. The West has no answer for him, and perhaps more importantly, they have no leverage. What does France do when its military bases are ejected, its mining companies lose permits, and its ambassadors' words no longer carry weight? What does the U.S. say when intelligence cooperation is severed and the ARICOM playbook no longer applies? They issue bland statements, they monitor the situation, but that's all, and behind the scenes a quiet scramble. Western diplomats are desperately trying to re-establish contacts with second-tier officials, hedge their bets, and figure out what went wrong. Intelligence agencies are reassessing their threat maps, realizing that Burkina Faso no longer behaves predictably. Financial institutions are starting to panic about new monetary unions and anti-dollar trade deals forming under the AES banner, emboldened by Russian support and the old weapons of control, sanctions, loans, visa bans. They don't bite like they used to, because trade doesn't need a green light from Brussels or a nod from Washington. He's getting trucks from Moscow, software from Minsk, and maybe one day currency swaps from Beijing. But what scares the West the most isn't the hardware or the headlines, it's the applause, the popular legitimacy Traoré is building in the streets. That raw, youth-led energy cheering for sovereignty, mocking foreign intervention, and chanting AES slogans in markets and classrooms. That's what they can't contain. It's not just power shifting, its narratives are collapsing. In the final blow, it's the cultural one when an African leader flies over restricted airspace to stand beside Vladimir Putin and is received not as subordinate, but as a peer. It rewrites decades of diplomatic theater. It tells the next generation that you don't need to seek approval from Paris or Washington to matter on the global stage. You can build your table and sit at it as an equal. So now, while Burkina Faso arms itself, feeds itself, and orbits its sky, the West is stuck in analysis mode, wondering how it lost control, wondering when the dominoes will fall. Because if this is what a handshake in Moscow can unleash, what happens when the whole continent starts reaching east? Let's just say the empire may not be falling, but the illusion of it already has. Do you think Traoré letting go of the West was the best decision? Let us know in the comment section. Will he be able to face the hate against him from the West? Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If so, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We have decided to bring videos on something nobody talks about: the Black culture, civilization, history, and evidence about how glorious Blacks have been. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, stay tuned.